Why did her hands move with such practiced precision for someone on her first day? The morning sun stretched long shadows across the hospital parking lot. Sarah Martinez pulled her beat-up Honda into the staff section, killing the engine with a soft turn of the key. 26 years old, she looked younger. Fresh scrubs still creased from the package. Dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Nothing remarkable, nothing that would make anyone look twice. But her hands, when she gripped the steering wheel, when she reached for her bag, they moved differently, controlled, efficient, like they'd done harder things than parking cars and carrying lunch bags. The hospital badge hung against her chest. It felt foreign, wrong somehow. She took a breath and walked through the automatic doors of St. Mary's Medical Center, and the fluorescent lights hummed overhead like they were welcoming her to a world that would never quite understand where she'd been. "You must be the new nurse." Janet's voice carried authority, the kind earned through decades of night shifts and impossible decisions. She stood behind the reception desk, her reading glasses hanging from a chain, her eyes already measuring Sarah with the practiced assessment of someone who had watched countless graduates walk through those doors. Sarah Martinez, right, fresh out of nursing school. Sarah nodded, managed a small smile. "Yes, ma'am, ready for my first day." Janet looked her up and down. The look wasn't unkind, just skeptical, young, eager, probably thinks she's going to save the world. She handed Sarah a stack of paperwork. "This is the cardiac unit. We get the tough cases here. Hope you're ready for it." The other nurses gathered around the station, glanced over, mild interest, nothing more. To them, Sarah was a name on a schedule, another rookie who would either survive or quit within 6 months. Her youthful appearance did nothing to inspire confidence. Her quiet demeanor made her almost invisible. And that's exactly what she wanted. Dr. Williams approached during morning rounds. Tall, gray at the temples, known for being particularly hard on new nurses. He believed only the strongest could handle the pressure of his department, and his eyes barely registered Sarah's presence as he spoke. "So this is our new team member." He didn't even look at her directly. "I trust you understand that this isn't nursing school anymore. Real lives are on the line here." Sarah simply nodded, her expression calm, professional, empty of the things she could have said. "I understand, doctor." "Good, you'll be working with Maria today. She'll show you the ropes." He turned to Maria, a veteran nurse with 15 years of experience. "Take it easy on her first day. Let her observe before throwing her into the deep end." Maria nodded, Sarah followed, and the day began. The cardiac unit hummed with controlled urgency, beeping monitors, complex medication schedules, the delicate balance of caring for patients whose hearts were failing them. Sarah took mental notes of everything. She asked thoughtful questions, never seemed overwhelmed. Even when faced with the most challenging cases, her breathing stayed steady. "You're handling this better than most rookies," Maria admitted as they checked on Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman recovering from a heart attack. Usually new nurses are either crying by lunch or acting like they know everything already. Sarah helped adjust Mrs. Chen's pillows. Her movements were gentle, practiced, too practiced. "I've learned that listening is more important than talking, and that every patient deserves respect, no matter how routine their case might seem to us." Mrs. Chen's eyes fluttered open. Confusion clouded her face, then fear. "Nurse, I'm scared. The pain, it comes and goes. What if my heart stops again?" Sarah didn't hesitate. She pulled up a chair beside the bed. Her voice became something different, warmer, like she'd done this before, like she'd sat beside frightened people in worse places than hospital rooms. "Mrs. Chen, I know you're frightened. That's completely normal after what you've been through. But you're in good hands here. Your heart is healing, and we're monitoring everything very carefully." She took the woman's hand, held it gently. "Can you tell me about your family? I see you have pictures on your bedside table." For 10 minutes, Sarah listened. Mrs. Chen talked about her grandchildren, Her face relaxed. The fear began to fade from her eyes, replaced by something softer, the comfort that comes from being truly heard, from being seen as a person, not a patient number on a chart. Maria watched from the doorway, impressed despite herself. Most new nurses were so focused on the technical aspects that they forgot about the human element. But Sarah seemed to understand instinctively that healing involved more than just medicine and monitoring. During lunch break, Sarah sat alone in the cafeteria, quietly eating her sandwich while reviewing patient charts. The other nurses chatted at nearby tables about weekend plans and hospital gossip, but no one invited the rookie to join them. It wasn't personal, just the way things worked. New nurses had to prove themselves before being accepted into the tight-knit community. "Mind if I sit?" Tom, one of the male nurses from the emergency department, known for being friendly to everyone regardless of their experience level. "Please do." Sarah set down her charts. "How's your first day going? Cardiac unit is tough for a newbie." Sarah smiled slightly. "It's challenging, but I expected that. The patients here have been through so much. They need more than just medical care. They need someone to see them as human beings, not just cases." Tom nodded approvingly. "That's a good attitude. Some nurses never figure that out." He glanced at the charts she had been studying. "You're really dedicated, reviewing cases on your lunch break." "I want to understand each patient's story. The medical history tells you about their condition, but it doesn't tell you about their fears, their hopes, their families waiting at home. That information is just as important for their recovery." As the afternoon wore on, Sarah continued to surprise her colleagues. When alarms went off in room 314, she was the first to respond, moving with a calm efficiency that seemed at odds with her rookie status. The patient, Mr. Rodriguez, was experiencing irregular heart rhythms, and Sarah immediately began the appropriate interventions while calling for the doctor. "How did you know to do that?" Jennifer asked, another nurse who had been working the unit for 3 years. Most new nurses would have panicked. Sarah continued monitoring Mr. Rodriguez's vitals as she answered, "I've seen this before. The key is staying calm and following protocol while keeping the patient as comfortable as possible." Jennifer frowned slightly. "Seen it before, but this is your first day in a hospital." Before Sarah could respond, Dr. Williams arrived to assess Mr. Rodriguez. As he worked, he noticed Sarah's competent assistance, the way she anticipated his needs without being asked. "Good work," he said quietly to Sarah as they left the room. That was textbook response time and execution. The day ended with Sarah completing her charting and saying goodbye to her patients. Mrs. Chen squeezed her hand as she prepared to leave. "Thank you for listening to me today, dear. You have a gift." As Sarah walked to the parking lot, she reflected on her first day. The other staff members saw her as just another rookie nurse, young and inexperienced. They had no idea about the experiences that had shaped her, the challenges she had already faced, the strength that lay beneath her quiet exterior. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new patients, new opportunities to prove herself. But for now, she was content knowing that she had made a difference in the lives of the people she had cared for. That was all that mattered. But there was something they didn't know, something she hadn't told them. Not yet. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah's first day, and the whispers had started. Not the bad kind, the curious kind. She arrived 30 minutes early every morning to review patient charts. Her quiet competence had begun to earn respect, though she remained something of a mystery to her colleagues. They saw skill. They didn't understand where it came from. The cardiac unit buzzed with its usual controlled chaos when the ambulance bay doors burst open. Paramedics rushed in with a young soldier on a stretcher, his uniform torn, bloodied, his face pale beneath the oxygen mask. 22-year-old male, severe chest trauma from an explosion, possible cardiac contusion. Sarah happened to be walking past when she saw the soldier's uniform. She froze, just for a second. Her hand gripped the wall, then something shifted in her expression, something darker, more focused. She moved toward the trauma bay. "Sarah, you're cardiac, not trauma," Jennifer called out. "Let the ER team handle this." But Sarah was already at the soldier's side, her hands moving over his chest with the kind of confidence that made the trauma team pause. She wasn't checking. She was reading injuries the way someone who had seen them 1,000 times would. Percussion sounds dull over the left hemithorax. Possible hemothorax. "We need chest imaging now." Her voice was different, commanding, not the quiet rookie anymore. Dr. Williams appeared in the doorway. His eyes widened as he watched Sarah work. The transformation was complete. This wasn't a new nurse fumbling through her first emergency. This was someone who had done this before, under worse conditions, in places where mistakes meant death. The young soldier's eyes opened, glassy with pain and morphine. He looked at Sarah and something in his expression changed. Recognition, not of her face, but of something she carried, something he understood. "Ma'am," his voice was barely a whisper. "Ma'am, are you?" Sarah leaned close, her voice soft, steady. "You're safe now, soldier, you're home, we've got you." The soldier's hand found hers, gripped it, not like a patient, like a brother in arms. The team stabilized him, got him to imaging. As they wheeled him away, Sarah stepped back. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, from memory, from the weight of seeing that uniform again, smelling the blood and dust that never quite washed away. "Sarah." Dr. Williams stood beside her. His expression was different now, searching. That wasn't a rookie's response. That was combat medicine. Sarah met his eyes, said nothing. "You've done this before, haven't you? Not in a hospital, somewhere else." She took a breath, chose her words carefully. "I have experience with trauma, yes." "What kind of experience?" "The kind that teaches you to work fast, stay calm, and never forget that the person on that table is someone's son, someone's brother, someone who matters." Dr. Williams studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "We need to talk, but first let's make sure that soldier pulls through." They saved him. Jake Thompson, 22 years old, 3 tour in Afghanistan. His heart had been bruised by the blast, but it would heal. His body would recover. But his mind carried scars that would take longer to fade. Sarah visited him that evening. Off the clock. Found him awake, staring at the ceiling, his jaw tight with the kind of pain that morphine couldn't touch. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. Jake turned his head, looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. "They tell me I'm lucky, that I get to go home now, that I survived." "You did survive." He laughed, bitter. "Did I? Because I don't feel like I survived, I feel like I failed. My unit is still over there, still fighting, and I'm here safe, while there." He couldn't finish. Sarah pulled up a chair, sat down, and for a moment she let the mask slip just a little. "I know what you're feeling. The guilt, the anger, the sense that you should still be there, that leaving them behind makes you a coward." Jake's eyes snapped to hers. "How do you?" "Because I felt the same thing. When I came home, when my war ended and theirs didn't." The room went quiet. Outside, the hospital hummed with life. But in that moment, it was just 2 people who had walked through the same fire, who carried the same weight. "You served," Jake said. "It wasn't a question." Sarah nodded. "Combat medic, 5 years, 3 deployments." Jake stared at her, then at her hands. Those hands that had known exactly what to do when he came through those doors. "You were treating wounded in combat." "That was my job. Keep soldiers alive long enough to get them to people like me. People who could finish what I started." "How many?" I stopped counting. After a while, the numbers don't matter. What matters is that you did everything you could, that you didn't give up, that you kept fighting for them, even when it seemed impossible. Jake's eyes filled. "I tried, God, I tried, but there were so many, and I couldn't save them all." Sarah leaned forward, her voice firm. "You can't save everyone, Jake. No one can, but you saved the ones you could. And that matters more than you know. Those soldiers you kept alive, they have families who still have them. Children who will grow up with fathers. Parents who didn't have to bury their sons. You did that. You." A tear rolled down Jake's cheek, but he nodded. The weight didn't lift, but maybe, just maybe, it felt a little lighter. Over the following days, Sarah's visits to Jake became routine. She helped him process his trauma, navigate the complicated emotions of survival guilt, and slowly, the hospital staff began to notice, began to wonder, who was this quiet nurse who spoke to combat veterans like she understood their language, who moved through the cardiac unit with the calm of someone who had faced far worse emergencies? Maria cornered her one afternoon. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me." Sarah set down the chart she was holding. "Okay. You're not just a new nurse, are you?" Sarah hesitated, then shook her head. "No, I'm not." "So what are you?" "I'm someone trying to figure out how to be normal again, how to help people without a rifle slung over my shoulder and mortars falling in the distance. I'm someone who spent years keeping soldiers alive in places where death was always one step ahead. And now I'm trying to use those skills to help people here, in a place where I can actually save them, where I don't have to triage based on who might make it and who won't." Maria's expression softened. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because I didn't want to be the veteran nurse, the one everyone looks at differently, the one who gets special treatment or special suspicion. I wanted to earn my place here, on my own merit, not because of what I did before." "You've more than earned your place, Sarah. But maybe it's time to stop hiding who you are. Because the person you were over there, that's part of what makes you so good here." Sarah looked away. The fluorescent lights hummed above. Somewhere down the hall a monitor beeped. Life went on, but the past never really left. It just learned to walk alongside you. Quiet, patient, waiting for the moment when you were finally ready to acknowledge it. Maybe Maria was right. Maybe hiding wasn't the answer. But revealing the truth meant opening doors she had spent months trying to keep closed. It meant facing questions she wasn't sure she could answer. It meant wearing her scars where everyone could see them. And she wasn't sure she was ready for that. Not yet. But the choice was being taken out of her hands. How long could she keep running from who she used to be? The truth came out the way truth always does. Slowly, then all at once. It started with Jake. He was recovering well. His heart was healing, but his mind was still fighting wars that only existed in his dreams. Sarah had been helping him, talking him through the nightmares, the flashbacks, the moments when the hospital room disappeared and he was back in the sand, choking on dust and screaming for a medic who never came. She didn't realize other people were noticing. Didn't realize that her methods, the way she spoke to him, the way she understood without him having to explain, were raising questions throughout the hospital. Dr. Williams called her into his office on a Thursday afternoon. His expression was serious, not angry, just intensely curious. "Close the door, Sarah." She did, sat down across from his desk, waited. "I've been doing some research." Dr. Williams leaned back in his chair. "After what I saw with Jake Thompson, after watching how you handled that trauma, I started asking questions, making calls." Sarah's jaw tightened. "What kind of calls?" "The kind that get routed through military channels. The kind that require security clearances and official records." He opened a folder on his desk. "Sarah Elena Martinez, born in San Antonio, joined the Army at 19. Completed combat medic training at Fort Sam Houston, deployed to Afghanistan 3 times over 5 years, served with the 101st Airborne, received multiple commendations for valor under fire." He looked up at her, and 5 purple hearts. The room went silent. Sarah's hands gripped the armrests of her chair. Her breathing stayed even, but something in her eyes shifted. The mask was cracking. "You were wounded 5 times in combat, 5 times, And each time you were injured while treating other wounded soldiers. He closed the folder. Why didn't you tell us? Because it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Sarah, you have more combat medical experience than most trauma surgeons see in their entire careers. You've performed life-saving procedures under fire. You've made critical decisions when there was no time to consult a textbook or call for backup. And you're telling me that doesn't matter. It matters to my patients, but it doesn't define me. I didn't want to be the veteran who everyone treats differently, the one who gets sympathy or suspicion. I wanted to be a nurse, just a nurse. Dr. Williams studied her. His expression softened. You're not just a nurse, Sarah. You're one of the most skilled medical professionals I've ever worked with, and you're hiding it. Why? Sarah looked away, out the window, at the parking lot where her beat-up Honda sat in the staff section, at the normal world that she was trying so hard to fit into. Because when I look in the mirror, I still see the medic, the one who couldn't save everyone, the one who came home when her soldiers didn't. And if people here know who I was, they'll expect me to be that person again. The hero, the warrior, the one who never breaks. She turned back to him. But I did break, Dr. Williams. I broke into 1,000 pieces over there, and I've spent every day since trying to put myself back together. I don't want to be a hero. I just want to help people, quietly, without all the weight of expectation. Dr. Williams nodded slowly. I understand. But Sarah, you need to understand something too. That experience you're trying to hide, it's not a weakness. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's a gift. And there are people in this hospital, in this community, who need what you have to offer. What do you mean? We have dozens of veterans come through these doors every month. Men and women dealing with physical injuries, psychological trauma, and the overwhelming challenge of transitioning from military to civilian life. They need medical care, yes, but they also need someone who understands, someone who's walked that path, someone like you. Sarah shook her head. I'm not qualified to. You're more qualified than anyone else here. You've lived it. And whether you want to admit it or not, you're already doing it. With Jake. With the other veterans I've seen you spend extra time with. You're building bridges between their world and ours, between who they were and who they're trying to become. What are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to stop hiding, to use your experience to help create something meaningful, a program, a support system, something that addresses the gap between military medical training and civilian healthcare. You could train our staff, mentor transitioning veterans, help them find their place in medicine after their service ends. Sarah sat with that for a long moment. The idea terrified her. It meant stepping into the light, wearing her past where everyone could see it. But it also meant something else. It meant giving purpose to the pain, meaning to the scars. I need time to think about it. Take all the time you need. But Sarah, your secret is already out. Jake has been telling other veteran patients about you, the nurse who understands, the one who's been there. Word spreads fast in the veteran community. They're already looking for you. Over the next few weeks, Sarah noticed the change. Veteran patients would ask for her specifically. They'd wait until she was on shift to discuss their fears, their struggles, their confusion about navigating civilian life after combat. She became a bridge between two worlds, the military they'd left behind and the civilian future they were trying to build. And slowly, reluctantly, she began to accept what Dr. Williams had said. Her past wasn't something to hide. It was something to transform, something to use. One evening, she found Jake sitting in the hospital garden. He was being discharged the next day. His heart had healed, but his journey was just beginning. Nervous? She asked, sitting beside him. Jake nodded, terrified actually. What am I supposed to do now? I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm not a medic. I'm just this broken guy trying to figure out how to be normal. You're not broken, Jake. You're healing. There's a difference. Feels the same. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a challenge coin, worn, faded, the kind soldiers carried as reminders of their unit, their mission, their purpose. My platoon sergeant gave me this. The day I was medevaced out for the last time. The day I knew my military career was over. He told me that the mission doesn't end when you take off the uniform. It just changes form. She handed it to Jake. Your mission now is to heal, to find purpose beyond the battlefield, to use what you learned over there to make a difference here. That's not less important than what you did in combat. It's just different. Jake held the coin, turned it over in his hands. What if I fail? Then you try again. That's what warriors do. We adapt, we overcome, we find another way. He looked at her, really looked at her. You're doing that, aren't you? Finding another way. Every day. And some days are harder than others, but I wake up. I put on the scrubs and I keep fighting, just in a different uniform. Jake smiled, first time in weeks. Maybe I can do that too. You will. And when you struggle, when you need someone who understands, you know where to find me. As she walked back into the hospital that night, Sarah felt something shift. The weight she'd been carrying, the shame of her wounds, the guilt of surviving, it didn't disappear. But it felt different now. Less like a burden, more like a responsibility, a calling. She was done hiding. It was time to wear her scars with pride. But she had no idea how public that decision was about to become. The program started small. Sarah worked with Dr. Williams and the hospital administration to create a veteran support initiative, a place where former military medics could come to explore careers in civilian healthcare, a bridge between the skills they'd learned in combat and the qualifications needed in hospitals, clinics, and emergency services. The first meeting drew 12 people, all veterans, all medics or corpsmen, all struggling to find their place in a world that didn't quite know what to do with their experience. Sarah stood at the front of the conference room, her hands clasped in front of her, nervous in a way she hadn't been since her first day at the hospital. Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy. Stepping into a room full of strangers and admitting that you're struggling, that transition is harder than you expected, that maybe you feel a little lost. She saw nods around the room, recognition in their eyes. I'm Sarah Martinez. I'm a cardiac nurse here at St. Mary's, and before that, I was a combat medic with the 101st Airborne, 3 deployments to Afghanistan, 5 years of treating wounded soldiers in conditions that no textbook could prepare you for. The room was silent now, attentive. When I came home, I thought my medical career was over. I thought that what I'd learned in the military, the skills I'd developed under fire, wouldn't translate to civilian medicine. I thought I'd have to start from scratch, prove myself all over again, and in some ways I did. She paused, looked at each person. But what I learned is that the skills we developed in combat, they're not just technical. They're about staying calm under pressure, making critical decisions with incomplete information, working as part of a team where everyone's life depends on everyone else doing their job, and most importantly, about seeing the human being behind the injury, about understanding that healing is more than just treating wounds. It's about giving people hope when they've lost everything else. A woman in the back raised her hand, former Navy corpsman from the looks of her. How do we convince civilian employers that our experience matters? Every job posting I've seen wants civilian certifications, hospital experience, things I don't have. Sarah nodded. That's what this program is about. We're working to create pathways, accelerated training programs that recognize your military medical experience and build on it instead of ignoring it. Partnerships with nursing schools and emergency medical training centers. And most importantly, we're working to change the conversation in civilian healthcare about what military medics bring to the table. Over the following months, the program grew. 12 participants became 20, then 30, then 50. Veterans from all branches, all specialties, all carrying the weight of their service and the hope of finding new purpose. Sarah worked with them individually. helped them navigate the transition, advocated for them with hospital administrators, and slowly the hospital began to change. They started seeing military medical experience not as something foreign, but as something valuable, something that made their staff stronger, more resilient, more capable of handling the impossible moments that defined emergency medicine. But success came with visibility. Local news picked up the story, then regional outlets, then national ones. Sarah Martinez, the combat medic turned cardiac nurse who was helping veterans find their calling in civilian healthcare, the woman with 5 Purple Hearts who had transformed her pain into purpose. She tried to deflect, tried to keep the focus on the veterans she was helping, but the media loved a hero story, and whether she wanted it or not, she was becoming the face of veteran transition in healthcare. Mrs. Patterson, one of her regular cardiac patients, saw her on the evening news one night. The next day, when Sarah came to check her vitals, the elderly woman grabbed her hand with surprising strength. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, tears in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me you were a war hero?" Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, her expression gentle. "Because I'm not a hero, Mrs. Patterson. I'm just someone who did my job, and now I'm doing a different job. That's all. 5 Purple Hearts isn't just doing your job, dear. That's sacrificing yourself for others, again and again." Sarah looked away. "The Purple Heart isn't given for success, Mrs. Patterson. It's given for being wounded, for bleeding, for surviving when maybe you shouldn't have. It's not a medal for heroism. It's a reminder of cost. But you kept going back. You kept serving. Because my soldiers needed me, just like you need me now, just like all my patients need me. The uniform changed. The location changed. But the mission has always been the same. Keep people alive. Give them a chance to see tomorrow. Help them heal." Mrs. Patterson squeezed her hand tighter. "You have a beautiful heart, Sarah. Wounded, maybe, but beautiful." That night Sarah drove home in silence. The words echoed in her head. Wounded but beautiful. Maybe that's what all of them were. All the veterans struggling to find their place. All the people carrying scars that no one else could see. Wounded but still fighting, still serving, still beautiful in their brokenness. She thought about the program, about the lives being changed, about Jake, who was now enrolled in paramedic training, about the Navy corpsman who had just been hired as an ER technician, about all the people finding new purpose because someone had believed their experience mattered. And she thought about the 5 Purple Hearts sitting in a box in her closet, medals she hadn't looked at in months, medals that represented the worst days of her life, the explosions, the blood, the desperate race against death that she won sometimes and lost others. Maybe it was time to stop hiding them. Maybe it was time to wear them, not as a badge of heroism, but as a reminder that wounds can heal, that scars can become strength, that the person you were in your darkest moment doesn't have to define you, but it can shape you into someone who helps others through their darkness. She pulled into her driveway, sat in the car for a long moment, then made a decision. Tomorrow she would tell Dr. Williams yes. She would expand the program. She would step fully into the light. She would wear her past with pride. Because the veterans depending on her deserved someone who wasn't afraid to be seen. And maybe, just maybe, she deserved to stop hiding too. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning. The hospital was holding a ceremony, a formal recognition of the Veterans Transition Program. Media would be there, community leaders, hospital board members, and Sarah had been asked to speak. To tell her story, all of it. She stood in front of her closet that morning, staring at the small wooden box on the top shelf. She hadn't opened it in over a year, hadn't let herself look at what was inside, but today felt different. She reached up, pulled down the box, sat on her bed and slowly lifted the lid. 5 Purple Heart medals stared back at her, each one representing a moment she had tried to forget, each one a reminder of pain, sacrifice, and the terrible cost of war. She picked up the first one. Afghanistan, 2016. Shrapnel from a mortar. She'd been treating 3 wounded soldiers when the round hit. Kept working even as blood soaked through her uniform. Kept working until all 3 were stable and evacuated. The second, 2017. Gunshot wound to the shoulder. She'd thrown herself over a dying private to shield him from sniper fire. He lived. She took the bullet that had his name on it. The third, 2018. IED blast. The Humvee in front of them hit the device. She'd been thrown from the vehicle, broken ribs, concussion, but was back on her feet treating the wounded before the dust settled. The fourth, 2019. Compound fracture of her left arm. She'd been dragging a wounded soldier to cover when a rocket-propelled grenade struck 10 meters away. She held pressure on his severed artery with her good hand for 20 minutes until backup arrived. The fifth, the last one, 2020. The explosion that ended her military career. She'd been inside a field hospital when insurgents shelled the compound. Stayed at her patient's side even as the structure collapsed around them. They both survived, but her injuries were severe enough that she could no longer deploy. 5 times wounded. 5 times she'd chosen to stay. 5 times she'd put others before herself. And for years she'd seen these medals as marks of failure, proof that she wasn't strong enough, wasn't fast enough, wasn't good enough to protect everyone. But maybe that was the wrong way to look at it. Maybe these medals weren't about failure. Maybe they were about something else entirely, about resilience, about refusing to quit even when your body was screaming at you to stop, about loving your soldiers so much that their survival mattered more than your own safety. She pinned all 5 medals to her white lab coat. They felt heavy, but not in a bad way. They felt like truth, like finally admitting who she was and what she'd been through, like stepping out of the shadows and into the light. When she walked into the hospital auditorium 3 hours later, the room was packed. She saw faces she recognized. Maria, Tom, Janet, Dr. Williams, Mrs. Patterson in a wheelchair near the front. Jake Thompson in the second row with his parents who had finally learned about his service and were bursting with pride. And behind them dozens of veteran patients, program participants, hospital staff, media cameras. All eyes turned to her as she walked to the podium, and for the first time in a long time she didn't try to make herself smaller, didn't try to hide. She stood tall, the 5 purple hearts pinned to her chest catching the auditorium lights. When I first came to St. Mary's, she began, her voice steady and clear, I thought my military service was something I needed to leave behind in order to become a good nurse. I thought that to heal others, I had to hide the experiences that had shaped me. She paused, let the words settle. I was wrong. What I've learned over these past months is that healing isn't about forgetting or hiding from difficult experiences. It's about transforming them into something that can help others. She looked out at the program participants. These men and women represent thousands of military medics who have skills, experience, and dedication that our healthcare system desperately needs. They've saved lives under conditions most of us can't imagine, made critical decisions when failure meant death, demonstrated leadership when everything was falling apart around them. But many of them have been told that their experience doesn't count, that they need to start over, that what they learned in combat doesn't apply to civilian medicine. We're here today to prove that nothing could be further from the truth. The audience began to applaud, but Sarah held up her hand gently. I want to share something personal with you. When I was serving as a combat medic in Afghanistan, I was injured in an explosion while treating wounded soldiers. It was my 5th combat injury, my 5th Purple Heart. She heard sharp intakes of breath throughout the room. This was the first time she had spoken publicly about the details. I woke up in a field hospital, and the first thing I asked was whether the soldiers I had been treating survived. When I learned that they had, I felt like I had done my job. But when I learned that my own injuries were severe enough to end my military career, I felt like I had failed. Her eyes found Jake's. He was crying openly. It took me a long time to understand that being wounded while serving others isn't failure. It's the ultimate expression of dedication to your mission. And it took me even longer to understand that my mission hadn't ended just because my military service had. She lifted her hand to the medals on her chest. For years, I kept these hidden away because I thought they represented failure, weakness, something I needed to overcome. Today, I wear them because I understand what they really represent. She let her hand fall. They represent 5 times when I chose to put others before myself. 5 times when I stayed focused on my mission despite personal cost. 5 times when I demonstrated the values that make good medics and good nurses. Courage, dedication, unwavering commitment to healing. The applause was thunderous, but Sarah waited for silence before continuing. The Military to Medical Bridge initiative isn't just about helping veterans become nurses or respiratory therapists or EMTs. It's about recognizing that the qualities that make exceptional military medics are the same qualities that make exceptional civilian medical professionals. Leadership, the ability to stay calm under pressure, experience with trauma, and most importantly, a deep understanding of what it means to serve something larger than yourself. Dr. Williams stood up. "Sarah, I'd like to say something if I may." She nodded, stepped aside, and Dr. Williams took the microphone. "6 months ago, we thought we were hearing a promising young nursing school graduate. What we actually got was one of the most skilled, dedicated, and inspirational medical professionals I've ever had the privilege to work with. But more than that, we got someone who has fundamentally changed how we think about service, about healing, and about the connections between military and civilian medicine." He faced the audience. "The Bridge Initiative has brought 12 exceptional new healthcare professionals to our community, but it's also taught all of us something important. It's taught us to look beyond the surface, to recognize strength in unexpected places, to understand that sometimes the people who seem the quietest have the most profound stories to tell." After the ceremony, people swarmed Sarah, wanting to congratulate her, share their own stories, learn more about the program. But the conversation that meant the most came from Jake. "Thank you," he said simply as they stood in the hospital lobby. "For what?" "For showing me that being wounded doesn't define you, but how you use that experience can. For teaching me that healing is possible even when you think you're too broken to fix." His voice cracked. "And for proving that sometimes the person who seems like a rookie is actually the one with the most to teach everyone else." Sarah pulled him into a hug. "You're going to do amazing things, Jake. In whatever path you choose, just remember that your story isn't over. It's just beginning a new chapter." As the evening wound down, Sarah walked through the halls of St. Mary's one more time. She stopped at the cardiac unit where her journey as a civilian nurse had begun. The unit was quiet now, most patients sleeping, but she could see the soft glow of monitors, the gentle movement of nurses making their rounds. This was still her home base, still the place where she practiced the daily work of healing, but now it was more than that. It was the foundation from which she was helping to build bridges between two worlds that needed each other. It was proof that sometimes the most important service happens not on battlefields, but in quiet moments when one person helps another find hope, healing, and the strength to keep going. Sarah Martinez had started her civilian career trying to hide who she was. She had discovered that the most powerful thing she could do was embrace exactly who she had always been: a healer, a leader, someone dedicated to serving others, no matter what uniform she wore or what challenges she faced. The 5 purple hearts pinned to her lab coat caught the hallway lights as she made her final rounds. A quiet reminder that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from avoiding wounds, but from transforming them into wisdom that can heal others. Sometimes dignity doesn't shout its presence. It simply shows up, does the work, and lets the scars speak for themselves.